Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how to turn your mess into your message and how to prevent resentment and build resiliency instead. If this is your first time joining me, my name is Kylie Ota and I am a certified transformational coach and Christian life coach and mentor, helping women just master their mission and motherhood. So, again, sometimes life happens, right? And I've been talking about this to the people in my circle, and it's like, how do we salvage the beginning half of the year, right? We just started Q3, and how can we really salvage what happened at the beginning of the year, right? All that messiness and what we've learned in that season and turn it into our message. And there's probably messy stuff that you've had happen in your life way before COVID, way before anything else even ever happened. And I feel like there's some of you out there that are holding on to bitterness and resentment about things that have happened in your past. And today we're going to be talking about how to kind of flip the script and how to turn that resentment into steps to build your resilience. And these are things that I learned on the job. So I'm kind of taking like an engineering approach to how we used to solve problems in the refinery and using those steps and applying it to the personal matters that are happening in your life. Okay, so number one is take responsibility, right? You have to take responsibility for the things that happened. Of course, things happened to you because of other people. And I'm learning this in a course that I'm taking about the universal laws and just personal mastery. And it's been really eye opening for us to see. Okay, so for example, why was um, I didn't do my homework, right? I say I didn't do my homework for the class. Okay, what part of that is my responsibility? And you can go and look back and see, okay, well, I chose to watch TV instead of doing my homework. Or let's say my printer was jammed. I technically could have looked at it on my phone or my computer and just kind of handwritten the notes somewhere. Because the worksheet, like I didn't have to print it out to do the homework, right? It was pretty much make a list of steps that I wanted to take in my business is to start making things happen. And so when I realized that, I was like, wow, that's the same thing we used to do in the refinery when we used to investigate incidents that would happen. Um, right? So let's say if we're using the refinery as an example, someone got hurt, right? Really, in order for us to start the investigative process, we have to take responsibility, or the person that got into the accident has to take responsibility for his or her actions. Um, like if they turned the wrong valve or they lined something up the wrong way or they mixed chemicals the wrong way because they turned the wrong valve, right? It takes the person admitting it, or even if we're looking at what's happening in current events, um, a lot of what's happening with the police brutality is like people aren't taking responsibility for their actions. And the public is crying out for just people to take responsibility for their actions and have a proper consequence attached to those actions, right? And so admitting it is the first step. And there's a lot of times where resentment builds up because things have happened. There's a mess that happens, right? Um, so let's say like your kid spills his milk. That's a big mess, right? What's the first thing? Like milk gets spilled, right? Your mom, your back is turned, milk gets spilled. What's the first thing that happens? Turn around. I didn't do it, right? That's the first response that kids give is, I didn't do it, it wasn't me. And then it's like, no. And, and you can kind of tell who did it and who didn't do it based on, the emotional response when the consequences are laid out, right? If you say you charge, like say you have two kids, kid one actually spilled the milk, kid two did not, right? You can see who actually did the thing. If you say blanket statement, well, both of you are grounded. Kid two, who did nothing, will come say, I didn't do anything. Like, it's not, like, I really didn't do anything. And then kid one is just, gonna be like, okay, cool. Like, we're both getting punished, right? Anyway, step one is just to take personal responsibility for the actions, and not to say that everything that happened in your mess is just automatically turned inward and your fault per se, but there are certain things that led up to the event that happened that, like, oh, maybe if I didn't do this, then it wouldn't have happened. And so that leads me into number two. It's forgiveness of self and others, right? When we are looking at taking personal responsibility, sometimes we take on too much, especially if we're used to enabling and, right? It's like, oh, it's like um, narcissistic personalities, right? There are certain times where people manipulate you to make it seem like it is all your fault. And then you start taking on more responsibility for actions that actually weren't your fault. Um, so say you have a business in COVID, and like let me use brick and mortar as an example, right? Now you have, like, you're going bankrupt because of COVID. It's not necessarily your fault, right? COVID happened, and but you could look and say, right, I couldn't help that there's a worldwide pandemic that happened, but you could also say, well, well, actually, that's number three, but what could I have done leading up to COVID? Like, were there signs? Were there things that I could have seen to help me to be more able to sustain my business in case of, like, you can't prepare for a worldwide pandemic, but what steps could you have taken to get your business into a place that would be able to absorb the shock of this 3 month pandemic, right? So that leads me to number three, right? The first one is take responsibility. Number two, forgive self and others. And number three is make a list of lessons learned. So in the refinery, when we're doing an investigation of what happened, um, there are certain actions that, right, if we say something, it could implicate, right? If you say something, it could implicate you for not following the procedure, not following the like a safety recommendation. Say you didn't have the right mask on, right? A stitches mask. So you didn't have an N95 mask on and you got COVID. Oh shucks. I should have had an N95 versus just putting a scarf around my face, right? And that would be under a lessons learned. It's like, oh, okay, next time I go into this certain environment or next time I leave the house, I will be better prepared and have a different mask on. And in the beauty of making a list of lessons learned, I actually went back and I looked at June and looked at um, retro, what happened in June, and what I want to happen going forward for July. Like, oh, I had a plan for June. I didn't meet my goals. I didn't meet my targets. Okay, so what happened that caused me to not meet those goals? What happened to, uh, like, is it physical? Was it physical? And I am seeing a new, like, nutritionist, holistic practitioner, and I've been going through a detox through the month of June, so my energy levels have been up and down. And I'm also tracking what I'm eating and all the different things I'm doing, supplements and all of that. And I'm actually tracking the data and I'm watching every day how what I'm taking in is affecting my energy. So, right, there's physical, um, there's E for emotional, right? Emotionally, how, like, what happened emotionally to get me off track, right? Were there things in your personal life that got you off track? M for mental, right? Mentally, how was I today? Did I have brain fog? And usually like mental and physical kind of have a correlation, and then mental and emotional also have a correlation because right, when we're so caught up in our emotional thoughts, it takes away cognitive ability for our brain to function on, admin tasks or things that we have to do day to day for work, right? And then S is for spiritual. So taking spiritual inventory. And ever since March and like COVID started happening, I really got deeper into spiritual warfare, and especially because it's global and worldwide, and um, they're like I'm not in physical proximity with my family, so I can only reach them through prayer. And so I've been like getting really deeper into my spiritual practice of prayer and even like deliverance, even praying for deliverance, um, like over the airwaves, so to speak. And even when the riots were breaking out, I prayed like a generational prayer for, my ancestors, and any trouble or pilikia, as we say in Hawaii, right? Any trouble that maybe my ancestors have caused to add to what's happening in the racial climate, I repented on behalf of that. So right, that goes back to number two, forgiving self and others. And I feel like I left something out on the forgiveness piece, right? Take number one, take personal responsibility, and it's just like jotting down like what did I do to play a part in this mess, right? And you could also write a list of what did other people do to contribute to the mess if you have um, a issue with taking on too much of other people, what other people should actually be responsible for, right? And number two is forgiveness of self and others. So looking at the list, when you took inventory and taking personal responsibility of what happened, it's easier to look at the list and go down and just start forgiving, like praying a prayer of forgiveness, saying, okay, I forgive you, person, for this infraction that happened. And then you can also say, I forgive myself for this thing that happened. Even for the choices that you've made that, uh, say you took a wrong turn, and or say you fell asleep at the wheel and you swerved and you caused an accident, and God forbid somebody died, but that's a huge mess. You can just kind of like go back. There's a system that we use in the refinery called the 5 why system, and it's part of the taproot investigation process. But it's asking why. Okay, why did I fall asleep at the wheel? I stayed up too late the night before. Okay, why did you stay up late the night before? Um, I was working on a project because I had a deadline, or I drank too much caffeine, or I stayed up late watching a movie, whatever. Why did you stay up late the night before? And based on that why, okay, why were you staying up late? We'll just take the project. Why did I stay up late working on the project? Oh, because I procrastinated and the deadline was coming up quick and I felt like I needed to stay up to finish it. Or if you're watching a TV show, if you're like me, I like watching the ends of movies, so I know if I don't want to stay up for another 2 hours, I will turn it off. I'm like, nope, Or I will just record it on my DVR so that my brain knows that I will finish it tomorrow or whenever I get a chance. Because I have a finisher's mind, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to know the ending. Raise your hand if you're like me and you need to know the ending. So, yeah. And then like right once you have all the whys and the reasons for what led up to the event, you can allow forgiveness to happen, right? It's like, okay, well, I stayed up late because I needed to hit that deadline. Okay, you repent, say sorry that I fell into a habit of procrastination, and then, forgive me for being in a pattern of procrastination, and please, like, help me not to be procrastinating in the future, right? So that's like a process of forgiveness that you can use. And if there was a why attached to somebody else, and so this is where the resentment versus resilience piece comes in. It's really about resenting others, like the deadline piece. It's like, oh, I really resent my boss because it was a last minute project. They put this all on me and blah, 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 blah. Honestly, we don't know what pressures someone else is under, right? We really don't know. And so when we're projecting or putting things on them and making them be the bad guy, that's when resentment starts to build up. So if you want to build resilience instead of resentment, this forgiveness piece is really what's going to start the process of building resilience. And then the last one, number 3, making a list of lessons learned. This is going to further that process, right? What lessons did you learn going through that? Oh, if uh, if a client puts a last minute request on me, then either I charge a premium, or if you're working with a boss, it's like ask for a raise or ask for some kind of compensation for your time. Because you've heard me already talk about this, time is money, right? If you want something done faster at, let's say, Kinko's, you need like 1 hour printing, or even like when we used to have printed photos, right? The photo lab at CVS or whatever, right? 1 hour photo cost way more than standard processing time. Even shipping costs way more for overnight shipping versus standard shipping. So if you are, service provider, you can include um, expedited time frames and build that into your packages, right? So that there's no resentment. Yes, you're working harder, you're working longer hours, you should get paid, you should get compensated. And in like my day job when I was working in corporate, if I had to stay longer hours, we got time and a half. And if we worked holidays, not weekends, because weekends was part of the contract, but if we worked holidays, we get holiday pay. So if I was working tomorrow, let's say right tomorrow's July 3rd, I would get holiday pay. And yeah, it was really great. And even if you're not, it was built into the contract that it wasn't fair. Like sometimes holidays, depending on what cycle you're on, you would get more holidays. So they even built in a compensation. You have 8 hours of just pay on a holiday, working or not working. So, and that's where you start to lower the feelings of resentment when there is compensation or restitution attached, right? Whether it's just forgiveness or actual like compensation type of restitution, right? This is the part that starts to build the resilience, right? Having more money for your time makes it feel better staying late, right? But if you keep staying late and you're not getting compensated, right, that's when the resentment starts to build up. And then going forward, when you look at what happened and you kind of backtrack and you're doing reverse engineering, making a list of what you learned in the process, right? What did I learn as I'm going through this? I learned that if I have less than 24-hour notice, then I will charge a compensation fee. Or, I mean, I know it's different when you run your own business versus if you're working in someone else's business, or in the case like you have a package and it's you undercharged. Do you know you undercharged? I've seen it happen time and time again where there are people who quote a specific budget for a project thinking that it's only going to be X amount of work, and then you budget it out, and then when you actually get into the project, it's actually more than you bargained for, because the person that you're setting this up with, whether it's an actual service like um, my dad paints houses, right? And he looks at a house, he kind of like, okay, for this X amount of work, it should take me X amount of days, and he calculates how many days the project is going to take and how many people he needs on the job to do the amount of work. He builds in the package so that he gets paid, everybody gets compensated appropriately and for the amount of work that gets done, right? That's how you build out contracts. Or if you're just a service provider and let's say you're doing life coaching or something like that, right? How much do you want to get charged per hour? And it's not even the hourly rate that you spend in front of your client, but it's actually the total number of hours that you spend on a client's account, whether it's face to face or even behind the scenes. So hopefully that helps you. And anyway, like going back to turning your mess into your message, right? I kind of did that here. I use parts of my mess and I'm turning it into my message. So using an example from my account in my bank is I undercharged for doing work on client work, and I'm like, how am I going to turn this mess into a message? And that's kind of what I came up with today. And it also coincides with a couple of prophetic words that I received recently about how do we redeem the time of COVID and how do we go forward and move on. Because we still have the rest of the year. We still have 2 more quarters to go. Like, this is kind of like halftime, right? We're in halftime of the year, and what do you do during halftime during a game? Is you go back to the locker room, you regroup, you look back, you're like, how did we do? First quarter, second quarter, hey Joe, like, I think you're hogging the ball too much. I think you need to pass it to Mark. Let's try, and then Mark come in with I don't play sports, so if I'm botching up these references, I apologize. But right, hey Joe, stop hogging the ball, toss it down to Mark and let Mark go in for the shot. And then like as a coach on the sidelines, you can see these things, but Joe doesn't even know, right? When you're in the middle of the game, you can only see what you see, and so it's kind of a good thing to have these retrospective times, and it's times and seasons. And the way I look at seasons is spring is usually abundance. It's talking about abundance, and so that's kind of where, and it's tax times, tax season, even though tax season is now right in July because of what happened with COVID, but usually spring is a time of money and abundance. And then heading into fall, it's more about time. And this is, although, a lot of people do more of their organizing their time and like setting goals and stuff in winter, which like January, that's really a time of intention, not necessarily time. And anyway, I have a confidence quadrant worksheet that I use to help clients map out their priorities, and it's based on the four quadrants of time, intention, money, and energy and or execution, right? And so we are headed into the money quadrant or the money quarter of the year, which is Q3. I'm sorry, we're heading into the time quadrant of the year. We just came out of the money quadrant. Because if you look at July, August, September, and over the summer, we're really looking at like how to restructure our time. So let's, yeah, to recap, I have no idea where this, all of this is going. There's just, I'm getting a whole bunch of downloads and I'm seeing a lot of things as I'm talking right now. So, yeah, if you don't know me by now, I see things, I see visions, and I see pictures. And so that's just what I'm seeing in the spirit right now. So, as a recap, how to turn your mess into your message and build resilience and not resentment, right? One, take personal responsibility because admitting it is the first step. Number two, looking at those, forgive yourself for anything that you're feeling guilty or shamed about, and also forgiving others so that the resentment doesn't build. And number three, make a list of lessons learned, right? You're going to make a list of what you learned through the process so you don't get burned again, right? Because it's, what is that quote? Fool me once, shame on me. Oh, what? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? And how can we prepare better next time so we avoid having that same thing happen over and over again, right? We don't want to keep crying over the spilt milk, right? We want to make sure that we're taking action to prevent anything that is preventable, right? Worldwide pandemic. Well, arguably it could have been prevented, right? If I don't know, if that guy didn't eat the bat, it could have been prevented. Or wherever it came from and it didn't get let out, that could have been prevented, right? What steps or protocols did they overlook and this virus got out, right? And hopefully they beefed up their protocol and their procedures to not have not have this kind of virus like out, right? So anyway, hope you got something out of today's lesson. If you did, give me a thumbs up, give me a heart if you liked it, and if you're on the replay, hashtag replay so that I know that you watched it and I can give you some love. And if you have any questions about, or if there's anything that's come up and when you think about your mess and what you've come through and there's still a feeling of resentment or even like guilt and shame for things that have happened, right? Guilt and shame reflects on what we need to forgive ourselves for, and then the bitterness and resentment reflects on the areas that we need to forgive others for. And so if stuff like that is coming up for you, send me a DM and we can hop on the phone and we can pray through those things together, because really letting go of all of those yucky feelings, what's gonna help you step forward, clean, refreshed into Q3. All right, so that is my message for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Love you guys. See you again tomorrow for Fierce Feminine Fridays with Joy Rika, and we're gonna be talking about just what it's like to be an Asian American woman. And she's done a lot of world travel, so we're going to be talking about her travels into third world countries and how she serves there versus how she serves here in America, and kind of what she's experienced as a female. And she's also lived in Hawaii. She did her master's degree at the University of Hawaii. So that's going to be an interesting conversation as well. The perspective of racism and stuff in Hawaii. So that's what's going to be happening tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific. We'll be here live with Joy Rika. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Okay, bye.